Hi, everyone. A very pleasant good evening to us all listening. Whether you're listening, viewing live, or you're going to be watching us via the replay, we have a very interesting program lined up for you this evening. So, if you're a Jamaican, whether you live overseas or you live on our little piece of the rock, we have information that we want to share, pertinent information that we want to share with you this evening. Because guess what? We don't want to be selfish. We want to share, share, share because we want our Jamaicans to experience what we have experienced, and that is a solid part of our pot of gold. And so this evening we have joining us none other than Mr. Dwayne Berbick. And Mr. Berbick is the Communication and Public Relations, Corporate and Public Affairs Manager at the National Housing Trust. Mr. Berbick, a very pleasant good evening to you.
Thank you very
I
much, Marcy. A pleasant evening to you and our
thank
viewers and listeners as well.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you so much for really accepting my humble and sincere, appeal for you to be here with us on this humble platform this evening. We're not a big fancy name, but we thank you that you saw it fit that you could come here and just share, disseminate information with our Jamaicans. Because, as I explained to you in the letter, a lot of us Jamaicans are living at home, but we are just as uneducated about the National Housing Trust as many persons who have lived abroad. And so I was deliberate, Mr. Berbick, in not having asked you for a biography. And the reason for that is that when I look at my screen and I read and I said, oh, Dwayne Berbick is the communicative, I'm just reading. But when you tell our viewers, our listeners, firsthand who you are, what does that fancy title mean in layman's term? Can you just tell us a little bit who is Dwayne Berbick and what does that nice fancy title, what does it mean?
All right, that's the most probably awkward question you'll ask me for this evening. Who is doing Berwick? It's always tricky as to how to answer, but I'll try my best. Doing Berwick, I'm a communicator at heart, I would like to believe. And it was easy to say yes to you because any opportunity to share information that leaves people with a more informed perspective, that can influence their behavior change, that can influence, we're talking about home ownership, their consumer choices, that just generally leaves them in a better position is always a great opportunity for me to share. So I think that captures it. I'm a communicator by training, and I also want to say a communicator at heart. The title, the fancy title, corporate and public affairs manager, all things to all men, if you can simply put it that way. It's really, I'm charged with being first and foremost the NHD's corporate spokesperson.
Mhm.
But beyond that, I like to tell people the job is probably 20 to 30% communication and more so stakeholder engagement. It's reaching out to all our players because, of course, we do not exist in a vacuum. We exist in an industry that is built on relationship, and it's primarily managing those relationships, relationships with our contributors, relationships with our mortgagers, relationships with the media, relationships with our developers, financiers. Is really, as I said, 20% communication and about 80% stakeholder management, relationship management.
Okay, that's awesome to hear, Mr. Berbick. Can you tell our viewers when, why, and by whom was the National Housing Trust formed, started?
Sure. Well, the NHT started back in 1976, which makes us this year all of 45 years old. Rumor has it was started by one Michael Manning, not that part being the rumor, that part is a fact, of course. But the rumor is that he locked some people in a room, or trade unions representing the workers of Jamaica, some workers, and some different corporate persons, and say, hey, I need a solution for the working people of Jamaica as it relates to housing. And you all are not coming out of this room until you come up with a solution. That's the rumor. I'm not sure how
That
true it
kind of
is.
sound like the remembrance that I have of a Michael Manley, that December 6th born person. Sounds more like what I would do as a Sagittarian.
Right. So I was told his instructions are you will not come out until you come up with a solution. And there
Hmm.
came the NHD.
Okay.
But I believe, not because I work there, but I do believe that the NHD is one of the greatest examples of partnerships in Jamaica. A
Hmm.
partnership, as I said, that started between the workers of Jamaica, the unions representing the workers of Jamaica, and the government. But in the 45 years history that we have had, it has expanded way beyond that to include many other relationships with many other groups of persons. And it was really, as I said, set out with a mandate to increase the available stock of housing in Jamaica,
Hmm.
provide loans to individuals who want to undertake different types of home ownership projects. And we're not a regulator, but the NHD has some influence in the housing market. And so we have to leverage that influence to yield better ways and greater efficiencies as to how we go about housing, whether that relates to design, whether that relates to building technologies and efficiencies. But I believe that sums up what we do, why we do what we do, and how we do it.
Okay, that sounds great. Because for me, and I'm sure many can attest to this, that the NHT in years gone by, little humble individuals like us probably would not have found it possible to have owned a home like at age 27 when I was able to acquire my home. Some people have acquired even younger than that, and that is thanks to the NHT. So I take my hats off to the NHT for allowing me to have become a homeowner at age 27. And, that was to me one of my greatest accomplishments, other than having my daughter. Um, who, though, makes up the management structure currently of the trust?
Well, the NHT is led by first and foremost a portfolio minister who is the Prime Minister the Most Honorable Andrew Holness.
Hmm.
We are governed as well via the Prime Minister through a board of directors, the chairman currently being Mr. Lennox Chana. And then we have the day to day management structure. So we have our managing director, Mr. Martin Miller, and he's supported by four general managers across four divisions covering construction, customer relations management, finance, and corporate services. And they are supported by another set of about six or eight general managers. And that makes up our organization structure, where we have a staff complement of 1,415. We're a big organization. And we're a big organization
1,415. Is this throughout the island?
throughout the island, right? That's the point I was about to make. We're that big because we keep our customers close to heart. So we have to be in literally every parish of Jamaica. We are located, we have a presence, and we ensure that, our customers are close to us and
Mhm.
we are off number that we can reach as many of our Jamaicans as possible as it relates to assisting them with their home ownership goals.
So you're saying that there's an NHT office in each parish?
In every parish, there is an NHD
Every
office.
parish.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. All right. What are some of the major benefits of the trust?
Major benefits of the NHD.
You'll come back
We
in more details, but if you can just give us a breakdown of, some of the benefits that one
sure,
can forward to.
sure. We firstly we provide loans. We provide loans to our contributors, loans to build houses, loans to buy houses or buy land. And where you are an existing homeowner, we provide loans there as well for persons who want to make improvement to their property. But I think the sweetener for the NHD is that the NHD, with all those contributions individuals make, the NHD provides a refund of those contributions at a
Mm-hmm.
rate of 2% per annum. So every January 1, our contributors love us because they have an opportunity to get back what they would have invested in the National Housing Trust. With a whopping interest rate of 2% per annum, add that up over a 7 year period, you're really getting 14%, comparable or even better than what some people would get had those monies been in a financial institution. So we give loans, and we provide a refund of contributions. So those, I would believe, are our main benefits.
It's funny, Mr. Berbick, because that's one of the questions I was going to ask you later on. But the fact is that you touched on it. So let me go into it.
Sure.
It's funny because, a number of years, as a matter of fact, I left that job November 30, 2006. I resigned that particular job. I still have persons who will call me to inquire about their benefits. What can they benefit from NHD, from NIS? And as I say NIS now, viewers, listeners, we will be having the NIS with us next week, Wednesday evening, because we're just trying to disseminate as much information as we can. And this, as I say, is coming from the fact that I've had so many persons who have reached out for me for additional information. And so some of the times I will say to people, have you gotten your refund? And they're like, refund? What do you mean? And I'm like, yeah, if you contributed to the NHD in the past, you have money to get back. So actually, I have a friend who got a very sweet deal a couple of years ago, a couple of 100,000. Well, he was able to get from the NHD. And so, I was able to benefit, from my little cushion out of it, of course, that I gave him the information, you know.
Yes.
But for someone who intends to become a business owner, what are their obligations as far as the National Housing Trust is concerned to their employee?
Well, the National Housing Trust is governed by the NHT Act. NHT started in 1976. In about 78, 79, the Act came thereafter to govern the relations of the National Housing Trust. And the first thing you'll find in that Act is that once you are employed in Jamaica, you're working at least minimum wage. There
Mm-hmm.
is that legal obligation to make those contributions to the NHT. And whether you are doing so as a what we call a PAYE, pay as you earn individual, that is, you have an employer who deducts those amounts and remits them to the NHT on your behalf, or whether you are a self employed person, you are your own business person, regardless of the category of employment, that is your legal obligation first and foremost to be
Mm-hmm.
making your NHD contributions. So I would say to that business person, that business owner, do right by your employees because they too want to access and become homeowners one day. And without those contributions being made on their behalf and being paid over to the NHD would not be in a position to assist them. And as you would have started this program by saying, NHD is the gateway for the majority of individuals. Not everybody is able to walk into a bank and perhaps, get the necessary financing that they would require. But there is always an avenue, there is always an option, and there are always a set of benefits that they can access through the NHD to become a homeowner.
Okay, so I'm glad you said what you said, Mr. Berbick, because a major cause of discontent to a lot of contributors is that employers who do not pay over deductions that were that they took from their employees to the trust. Should one have all the proof that deductions were made? Although you just answered this question in your argument, they have proof that that their deductions were made, but the trust never received same. What happens in this case? Is there a recourse that the NHT can take to help the contributor? Is there a recourse that the contributor can do? What can one do in that specific case?
Definitely, there is recourse, and you would have. I mean, it's unfortunate. Let me start there, and
Mm-hmm.
and and quite sad that we do have employers who do that, who make those deductions and do not remit them.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunate. And what the NHT has to do in those instances is, of course, to take matters, before the necessary courts, tribunals, or different spaces to get that recourse on behalf of the customer. The important point you would have mentioned is proof, because if the NHT has no proof that these deductions were actually taken from the salary of the employee, then we have nothing to act on. So we always
Right.
encourage persons to keep those pay slips and ensure that, should anything happen, you have them and you can pass them on to the NHD for the NHD to do Firstly, the necessary investigations. If it requires an audit of the entity, we will conduct an audit of the entity. We will bring them before the tax court, right up through to the Supreme Court if necessary, to recoup those funds on the contributor behalf. And I must say too that we do that in the strictest of confidence. So you don't have to worry that um, if you come to the NHT and say, hey, I'm checking and I'm not seeing that these deductions were paid over to you, I want you to do something about it. We're not going to go back to the employer and say, it's doing, come tell me that, you're deducting the money and not paying it over. No, we do that. The
No, no snitching.
guaranteed confidence and, discretion when we take on those matters and they become legal
Right,
if necessary. But what we've also done, Marcia, is try to empower the contributor as well. Because many times we find that individuals learn that they're in this position because they either have applied for a refund and are not able to get it, or
mm-hmm.
are coming to the NHT to access a housing benefit, and then they're told that, hey, we're not seeing these deductions being remitted to us. So we're
Right.
empowering our contributors through our mobile app. It's 2021. We're right there on the cutting edge of technology. NHT Online, you can download that app in the App Store or via the Google Play Store. And we encourage persons to periodically just check. The app gives you up to 10 years of contributor data. So you can check from time to time to just ensure that those deductions are being made to the NHT. And if you see something that doesn't look right, something looks a little bit amiss, do not hesitate to reach out to us. And of course, as I mentioned, we will do the necessary investigation. And if it requires legal action, we will also take legal action to recoup those funds.
So, Mr. Berbick, you're saying that once you download the NHT online app, you can actually create an account for yourself, right?
Definitely. The app is able to tell you, you're able to see your employer, you're able to see the deductions made for you, the years. And a question I get all the time is, I want to know how much refund I'm going to get January 1. The app is
Exactly.
also that gateway that tells you how much refund you are also eligible for. So it's a very important tool, one that
Mm-hmm.
we are building out as well. So over time, we'll be able to add more services as it relates to being able to make payments through the app as well, and hopefully being able to apply for your loans through that portal. But we continue to make it something modular that we build out over time. So download it, empower yourselves, and stay informed about what's happening with your contributions.
All right. So, for persons listening, you need to download the National Housing Trust NHT. Go online, download it, have it handy on your phone. Everybody have a smooth person have a smartphone now. But what information, Mr. Burby? This is very important. What information do they need to put in? Because a lot of people, when I tell them, oh, you need your NIS number, and they're like, huh? And I said, you have a TRN, and they're like, when I left Jamaica, there was no TRN. What about the persons who contributed before TRN came into effect and they don't have any idea what their NIS number is? What do they do? Where do they stand?
Well, those two pieces of information that you would have indicated, they are very important to our business. It's that single unifier that lets us know across different business types what who we're doing business with, and the NHT is one such organization that
Mm-hmm.
uses the NIS and uses the TRN. And as part of the registration process, it will require you to have that information on hand to really do any kind of business with any entity in Jamaica currently. You will require one or both, the TRN or NIS numbers. I would encourage individuals who do not have that to see how you can get some assistance in terms of getting those numbers. I know we've modernized services here in Jamaica, and you said you will be speaking with the NIS next, and I
Next
know
Wednesday,
it's a
yes.
facility they also assist with. So persons can appoint someone in Jamaica who can
Mm-hmm.
go about getting those numbers, either recovering it if it is that they had it previously and
Mm-hmm.
have lost it, or in the case where they never had it any at all. I know they also have facilities in place that can assist in terms of registration. But as it relates to the registration for the app, yes, we will need your NIS, we will need your TRN, and we will also ask some information about you that only you will know.
Would know.
Your
Okay,
employment
and I
will
won't let
free up
I
some
won't let those cat out of
space.
the bag this evening because I want those to stay as confidential, so that nobody gets a wind of, trying to. But I just want to remind our viewers that you are tuned in to CS Bite and a Mouthful, and that our guest this evening is no other than Mr. Dwayne Berbick, Corporate and Public Affairs Manager at the National Housing Trust. Mr. Berbick, can you just remind me of the number? Because I think from my memory, is it 9296500?
Your memory is very sharp. It's still 9296500,
Okay.
and we go up to 9.
And you go up to 9. So for persons who are watching, my boss used to call me in the middle of the night, when I'm sleeping, and he would be like, Miss Harris, what is the number for so and so? It could be a US number. We did a lot of work with like Venezuela because we did the national stadium rehabilitation. And he would call me in the wee hours of the night just to get a number, and I would be able to just read it off. So I'm glad that I've not totally lost it with technology because I don't even know my son's number who lives in the house with me now. But I was just typing up and I remembered it, and I'm like, okay, fine. So if you're watching, the number for the National Housing Trust is 876-929-6500, and this goes up to 9. However, Mr. Berbick, I do have a problem.
Hmm.
And the problem that I have is the same problem that I know a lot of other persons have. Nobody answers the phone.
Oh,
Is there a 1-800 number that is easily answered, sir?
there is. There's a 888 call NHD.
888 call
NHD. And I must say,
NHT.
I'm a little disturbed to hear that we're having that challenge where you're making phone calls to us and no one is picking up. I know, not to make an excuse, I know
Mm-hmm,
the call times now have been a little bit longer given, we're all navigating this pandemic and face to face business is not preferred, especially now. So I know
mm-hmm,
our call center agents are a little bit pressed now doing
mm-hmm,
more of the business online, via phone and online. So the wait time is a little bit more. But if you are social media savvy, you have a presence on social media, there's also
mm-hmm.
that space where you can reach out to us. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. You have the option of reaching out to us there. And also via our website, nht.gov.jm, we have a live chat option here.
NHT.gov.jm.
Right. We have a live chat option there where you can also talk to a customer care agent in real time. So there
Okay.
is not just a phone call because we're busy people. We
Mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm.
sitting and waiting and to talk to someone. You can engage with someone via chat. You can send us a DM via any of the social media platforms, or you can always send us an email as well at wecare@nht.gov.jm. That's wecare at
Mm-hmm.
nht.gov.jm. So many avenues, many platforms that you can reach us. But my apologies that you've been calling us and not getting us.
But
I'm
you
sorry.
know something, Mr. Verby, because while I do say that, I must also commend the NHT staff because I've had situations where I've had staff who have actually picked up the phone and called me here to say, Miss Harris, your account needs attention. And they have given me number and they have given me time slots. Okay, we kind of put away the phone at a certain time. So if you're trying to reach us, call us within this time frame. It's always best for us.
Yes.
So I must commend the NHT for that.
We take
And
customer service very seriously. And I mean, it's not just saying it, uh, not to brag a little, but we do have the awards to show it as well that, customer service is really something that the National Housing Trust takes seriously. And so we're constantly looking at ways that we can improve that service delivery. And I thank you for this feedback because that's something, of course, we will always have to look at to see how we can make improvements there as well.
definitely, because there have been some persons that I've spoken to, and they have given me like numbers that I can call on WhatsApp. I don't even remember the numbers now, but they're like, okay, Miss Harris, you can reach back out to us at this number between this time and within that time. So I do commend the NHT for that. And you're saying not to whatever, not to brag, but I mean, if you have an asset, why not brag about it? And the NHT really deserves a big up this evening. You spoke about the NHT and we talk about the refund system in place. Um, is there and I mean I know that there we spoke about the NIS, the TRN number. Is there anything else that well there are some secret questions, pertinent questions that would be asked. Is there anything else that one needs to know when they want to, apply for a refund? Anything else of importance?
The other important part I would want to think is you need to know your employment history. So you need to know firstly what year we are taking refunds for, and for the
Mm-hmm,
record, we're currently making refunds for the year 2013 and earlier. And the application process will require you to indicate what years you're applying for, and you need to know who was your employer for that particular year as well. And finally, we want to ensure that the money gets to you. So we want you to tell us how you intend to collect it. There is the preferred option for the majority of persons is as a deposit to their bank account. So if
mm-hmm,
that's your option, do have that banking information on hand when making the application, and ensure that the name is spelled correct. Ensure if it's a savings account that you do indicate it's a savings account, not a checking account. You know,
mm-hmm,
because those simple, to me and to persons, they may be as simple. Okay, you can see my intention, but really
mm-hmm,
and truly, we're dealing with serious business, so we're not going to
right.
take things for granted. If there's a
Mm-hmm,
hyphen in your name, ensure that you put that hyphen in your name. If there's none, do not put one in, because really and truly, Dwayne Berbick, Dwayne versus Dune could really be two different persons, or Berbic without the K, Dwayne spelled regularly, could really be two different persons. So we don't take
right.
things for granted because we're dealing with persons' money. So you have to ensure that you pay attention to detail and there's accuracy between the information you provide to us and the information that's, for example, at your bank. And also for those persons who do not have local bank accounts, you also have the option of collecting your refund via one of three remittance agencies. There's VMBS, there's Jamaica National, and there is also JMMB. So we give persons options through which that that they can collect those refunds of their
So
funds.
if someone is living here in the state, Mr. Berbick, and you said Jamaica National, can they collect here
Yes, they can.
in the
Having
equivalent of US?
having made the application,
Uh-huh,
we thereafter and select Jamaica National or VMBS or whichever, or JNB as a remittance agent partner. I'm
uh-huh,
being thorough to make sure I mention all of them. you know, Having indicated that, we therefore ask that you reach out to them thereafter once the application process has started and is progressing, to let
uh-huh,
them know where exactly you will be collecting it. Because based off jurisdiction, there may be some differences as it relates to what you may need to bring to collect it.
uh-huh.
In Jamaica, it would be your ID card, that would be enough. But there may be variations based on the institution. They may require, additional details. So we ask that once you've made the application, and you can track the application online as well at our website, and you see where the application is progressing. We ask that you reach out to the institution, let them know that you will be collecting it at whatever location, and what are the additional requirements, if any, you need to bring.
Okay. So you mentioned that you are currently refunding for 2013 and years back. How
Yes.
far back? If I have never gotten my refund, how far back, Mr. Berbick, will you refund me my money?
It's still there. Once it came into our coffers, it will always be there.
So you
So
mean to tell me that I can claim from the NHT started in 1976 all the way to now? All the
once
way to 2013?
once it came into the NHD's coffers, it will be there. Yes.
Wow. I'm only sorry I don't have any more money to collect. I've already collected mine. But we have a question coming in, Mr. Berbick, from Mr.
Sure.
Thomas Gordon. I am privy to the information, but I want you to answer for me. He's asking if you haven't contributed to the trust since 1991, what will he need to do to get benefit from the trust?
Um, I spoke about that piece of legislation being the NHD Act that governs our business. And one
Mm-hmm,
of the things it says is that at the time of application for a benefit, an individual must be a current contributor. And by
mm-hmm.
a current contributor, we mean that they have made 13 weeks contributions within the last 26 weeks. So within the
Within
last
the last 26 weeks.
right. So within the last half year, there must be 3 months contributions that would have been made
Mm-hmm.
on your behalf. Um,
Consecutively?
consecutively, yes.
Okay.
And that's where we get the last, in business, we get the last 3 pay slips. So once
Right.
you do the last
Right.
three pay slips, that's sort of akin to that. So
Mm-hmm.
the general eligibility requirement for a benefit is one, you must be between the ages of 18 and 70. You must have
Age
contributed
of 18 and 70?
and
70?
70.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, it was 65 prior to last year, but
Mm-hmm.
part of our research and our stakeholder engagement would have revealed that people are living longer, people are working longer, and perhaps need a little bit more time to do some of those home ownership goals. So we extended it by an additional 5 years up to age 70
Oh,
as at
that's
last year. So between
okay.
the so between the ages of 18 and 70, we have contributed to the NHD for 52 weeks, and those 52 weeks do not have to be consecutive; they can be broken. And
Mm-hmm.
the third point I mentioned, at the time of application, you must be current
Must be
with those
current.
NHD contributions.
Okay. So you're saying that this person migrated, say, 1991 based on the question asked. So
Mhm.
if he wants to get a benefit from the NHT, what will he need to do other than, yes, saying that he's current and whatever? How does he become current? What does he need to do? Is there an enrollment? Is there a re-enrollment? What would he need to do? How would he go about this?
You've added a new variable now, Marcia. You said you'd have migrated. I took it for
Mm-hmm.
granted that the person was Jamaican before. So no,
Yeah.
as in Jamaican, yes, but living in Jamaica. Um,
Okay.
Having now introduced this variable of having migrated, there is a process of re-enrollment because
Mm-hmm.
the act, and you hear me reference this act all evening, the act
Mm-hmm.
says once you're in Jamaica, you're legally obligated, you're working in Jamaica, you're legally obligated to make those payments. But now
Right.
you're overseas, you're a Jamaican overseas, you've migrated. Now
Mm-hmm.
you've entered a new category of contributor status that we call voluntary, which, as its
Mm-hmm.
name suggests, you do not have to pay, but based on your home ownership goals, whether it's for yourself, you want to come back home and build or buy something, or you want to assist someone with their home ownership goals back home, a family member, for example, you
Mm-hmm.
found it necessary to continue making those NHD contributions. So when you're overseas now, you're now categorized as a voluntary contributor.
Mm-hmm.
It means you have to be re-enrolled in that new status as a voluntary contributor. So
Okay.
we would want to get that NIS again, that
Mm-hmm.
TIN. We want proof of residency, and there are some other questions that we'll ask about your income to be able to verify your income so that we can calculate the correct amount that you're supposed to pay. And once you're able to furnish us with that, with those copies of those documents, having properly notarized, of course, then
Mm-hmm.
we'll be able to re-enroll you into the fund. So that process actually is one that we facilitate online as well. So you can
Oh.
so you can always go to our website nhd.gov.jm, look for
Mm-hmm.
voluntary contributor, and it will
Right.
give you a list of those documents that we require and how you can get them to us so we can facilitate registration.
Okay. That sounds excellent, Mr. Berbick. Um, question. A lot of people, I have friends who, for one reason or the other, they had a benefit, joint benefit maybe, or individual benefits. But for some reason, a lot of situations happen, Mr. Berbick. Relationships did not work out. Some people pretty much had to run away from relationships, one reason or the other, that they migrated. Um, some people have basically left everything behind and have never looked back. Although their names is on the house, they have no idea or anything like that. What are they legally entitled to for that home that they have left 20, 30 years ago? And if they're no longer interested in that home and they're interested in buying something new, can they get another benefit from the trust?
Generally, Marcia, those cases we look on their own merits.
Mm-hmm,
Having established, as you would have said, that life happens and circumstances change and situations change.
mm-hmm,
Many times, or in some instances, it's not the individual's own doing any at all. That
right.
was contributed to that. And the
Mm-hmm,
NHD is mindful and sensitive of those circumstances. So we generally take those on a case by case basis.
okay.
What is the benefit specifically that the person would be able to access? There are some more questions that we would have to probe to find out what exactly happened, what's the current status, what happened with the benefit that they previously received. We look at different variables and have that conversation with the individual to find out what is happening or what has happened, to see where they are now and to see how best we can provide some assistance to them. So, unfortunately, I can't say to you specifically an individual can get X or Y,
Your
but we
answer
will,
is
of
quite
course,
your answer
look
is
on
quite
those
reasonable because,
merits.
as you said, it's on a case by case merit. You take each case on its own merit, and so that's a reasonably enough answer. I think for myself and for the persons who are listening, sounds more than reasonable to me. But you alluded just now when you answered Mr. Gordon's question, and I'm not meaning to, be repeating, but we spoke about persons who have contributed but for one reason or the other, just never took up a refund. They never took up a benefit from the trust. Can this be gifted? You spoke about gifting or assisting family to family members, and if so, what is the process? Because I know that there's a gifting scheme that the NHT has. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Tell our listeners a little bit more about that, Mr. Bradley.
Okay, so there are generally two options that individuals can consider. There is a gifting of the benefit, as you would have so termed it.
Mm-hmm,
Generally, the NHD reserves that for parents who are passing on the benefit to biological or legally adopted child. So the parent did not use the benefit, either the points that they would have accumulated for their years of contribution, which allows them to be, selected for an NHD scheme unit, or
mm-hmm.
the actual loan amount that a parent can pass on either or to a biological or legally adopted child.
Okay.
Under other circumstances, however, any two individuals can co-apply for a benefit. So we look at persons being able to qualify for a benefit. It's personal. So what happens with Marcia will of course be different from what happens with Dwayne,
Mm-hmm,
as it relates to the different variables of affordability, interest rate, etc. But
mm-hmm,
any two individuals having qualified in their own right can pool those benefits and use it to undertake some kind of housing related project. I will put this rider, this caveat, however, that you have to do your research to ensure that you know what you're getting into. And that's why a lawyer is always a very important person to have as part of the mortgage process, because that
mm-hmm.
lawyer will be better able to explain to you what are the options. You could get into deep waters. Are we joint tenants? Are we tenants in common? am,
Common.
am I waiving my interest totally in this property and say, okay, it's just you who is responsible for that. Am I going
Mhm.
to assist with the mortgage payments on a monthly basis, or do you have the salary to take on the mortgage single-handedly? Those are some of the variables that you would have to look at. And for that broad guidance, yes, the NHT has its policies and the NHT has its terms, but I would always
Mhm.
recommend the persons to get legal advice where co-applying with an individual is concerned.
So, question, I know the NHT has a kind of a counseling thing that they take home buyers through. Would you recommend that persons also get their individual lawyers, or can they use the legal entities, the legal benefits that is there at the NHT? What would
Well,
you recommend?
really, when you think about it, the mortgage has different interests. There is the vendor has their interest, the
Mm-hmm.
purchaser has their interest, and the mortgage institution have their interest.
There,
And really,
right.
truly, every party should come to the table with their own legal representation that looks out for their interest. And
Interest.
people take it for granted that, okay, NHD has a very good legal team. Nothing is going to happen with my transaction. But really
Mm-hmm.
and truly, the NHD's legal team looks out for the NHD's interests.
Benefits.
So there may be some things where interests overlap between the purchaser and
Mm-hmm.
the NHD, the financier in this case, and the NHD's legal team may be able to pick that up. But don't take it for granted that there may be concerns with the sale agreement for the purchaser and the purchaser only. It's not the NHD's responsibility to point that out. As I mentioned, NHD's legal team look out for the NHD's interests. And I'm not being harsh by saying it's not the NHD's responsibility to,
Mm-hmm.
to point that out, because we enter into the realms of conflict of interest,
Mm-hmm.
which is why
Mm-hmm.
everybody has to get their own lawyer who
Right.
looks out their own interest as part of the process.
What is your view, though, Mr. Berbick? And this might be your personal view. I don't know if you'd mind sharing that about a buyer and a seller sharing legal representation.
I revert to the answer I made earlier.
Of
Every
the
party has, if there is
individually
a con, and
has.
I say that because if there's a conflict,
Mm-hmm.
who will that attorney defend? Will they defend the purchaser's interest?
Or the
Will they
buyers.
defend the buyer's interest?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is a real
Because he's
conflict
caught
that
in the middle.
arises. Yeah, you're caught in the middle.
Yeah.
It's an uncomfortable position to be in.
Right.
And I've heard the scenarios where persons do that. And if it works for you, good. I wouldn't, however, because I want to ensure that, you know,
You're getting the
my
best.
interest is not with any kind of however or providing that or if my interest is my interest. So I personally would ensure that I have my own representation to ensure that there are no, and I know it's tempting because it may, for some persons, it costs a little.
Mm-hmm.
Legal fees are typically between 2 and 4% of the value of the property. So if you can save anywhere, I mean, it would be tempting too. But don't take it for granted that your interest will always be defended. It's best to know that if anything goes wrong, it's between my lawyer and I, who
Mm-hmm.
will have to defend me, and it's not my lawyer caught in the middle, as you would have indicated, between the
Right.
buyer and the purchaser's interests.
Okay. In the beginning of the program, Mr. Berbick, we spoke about the trust having many different benefits that one can tap into. I know that
Mhm.
there's an open market.
Yes.
I know that there is one that they can. I remember I had one that the NHT took over my mortgage from a lender, from a banking institution. Can you tell us about some of the various benefits and the maximum that one can get out, the maximum amount of funds that one is entitled to within these various areas?
Okay. I'll try my best, but I'll give a rider before that this list may not be exhaustive
Okay.
because it could be a very long list, but I capture the main ones.
All
So
right.
There's the open market purchase, and the maximum that the NHG makes available currently for that is $6.5 million per applicant. Two
Per
individuals can
applicant.
per
Okay.
applicant, right? So two individuals can always co-apply and access up to $13 million to purchase something on the open market. And by open market, we pretty much mean you see a vendor, a developer, someone is selling something outside of the NHD. That's open market for short. So an individual can
Yes.
get their benefit and go and purchase that. If for
Question,
whatever
Mr.
reason,
Berbick. You said two individuals. Is it the maximum? Can persons
maximum
use
two,
three? Maximum is two.
maximum
Okay.
two,
Okay.
right? If for whatever reason an individual needs more than $13 million, so let's say two individuals are co-applying, or even one individual who is
Mm-hmm.
making this purchase and they're accessing that 6.5 and they need additional funding, the NHT has a joint finance mortgage program with up to about 10 mortgage institutions. And how that
Mm-hmm.
works pretty much is that we take the hassle out of the customer coming into the NHD and applying for the 6.5 and going over to the other institution and applying for the additional amounts that they need. They can
Mm-hmm.
just go to that institution, indicate to them, hey, I see this property, the property costs $15 million. I'm getting my 6.5 from the NHD. I'm not great at math. I believe it's 8.5 more that I require.
Mm-hmm.
Then what that institution will do now is reach out to the NHD and process that 6.5 at the NHD's interest rate, and the additional 8.5 that you will need from them, they process that at their interest rate. And it's a similar arrangement when it comes to payback as well, that the customer does not have to come into the NHD and pay the mortgage
Their,
amount for the
their
6.5,
monthly.
and go to the bank and pay for the 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
They make one payment through the bank, and on the back end we work out who is supposed to get what. So it really is a one-stop shop for the customer that takes out the hassle out of not just the mortgage application process or the loan application process, but also out of the buying process, out of the mortgage payment process on a monthly basis going forward as well. So that's our joint finance mortgage program, JFMP for short. There is
Question for you. What is the trust maximum interest rate currently?
the highest interest rate currently we have is 4%, which is
4%.
which
Okay.
is the lowest you'll find anywhere on the market
Yep.
currently. The lowest
Definitely.
interest rate is 0%. So we our interest rates range from as low as 0 to a high of 4%.
Mr. Berbick, hold on. When you say zero, that means I can borrow money from the trust and don't pay any interest on it?
And pay no interest on it, exactly. Yes.
All right,
For
I'm coming in with an application tomorrow. You hear? Because I never hear
I'm
where we're giving money with 0% interest rate.
I'm not sure you would qualify, Marcia. You look like money. But
You notice the operative word you said, Mr. is much. I look like. Looks are deceiving. Looks
but
are
that's
deceiving.
that 0% really is for our lowest earning contributors, those persons who earn between minimum wage, and minimum wage currently in Jamaica is about $7,200 and up to $30,000 per week, and that's gross income before the deductions are made. So all those contributors, and actually that's the majority of our contributors. When you look at our contributor base, the majority of them fall below that $30,000 per week. So the
Mm-hmm.
majority of them actually get their interest rate, their loans at a 0% interest rate.
0%. Wow.
Yes, 2% if you earn between $30,000 per week and $42,000, and the highest income band, 42,000 and $1 and above, they get their loans at 4%. So 4% at our highest, 0% at the lowest.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so you want to continue to tell us about the different types of, we mentioned about the open market just now.
Right.
What are the other major types that there are?
The other major types of benefits are there's the individual who has land and wants to build on that land.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the NHD will make that full 6.5 million, 13 million if you co-apply with someone available to undertake those construction expenses. And I must point out here that the individual looking to access that benefit does not necessarily have to be the title holder. That being, the title doesn't have to be in your name. But once there's a registered title in place and there's permission from that title holder can give a written permission to make the title available for the NHG to register its security against it. The NHG will also accept that. So it's an option actually I have been encouraging persons, because there is a concern about the cost of real estate in Jamaica. But we all have these intergenerational land in our families that have been passing down from grandpa and great grandpa, coming down, that remains undeveloped. And the truth is, you know, with the dynamics of what's happening in the construction industry, we have to be a little bit more creative in terms of how we pursue our home ownership goals. And one of those options that we can always pursue is to convert idle lands that we have, into real investment. So I
Mm-hmm.
always encourage persons, if you have land or there's land in the family, find out who has a title, find out if you can get permission, and come into us and access your NHP benefit and do construction. If you have no land, there is that option as well for you to break out that 6.5
Mm-hmm.
NHD loan rate into 2.5 million goes towards the purchase of the land, and the remaining 4 million for construction. And I know, and again, two persons can always co-apply here on access up to 5 million for the purchase of the land and
Right.
8 jointly for construction. And I've been getting this question a little of late, that some persons say, why don't you allow me to use all 6.5 to buy the land? I could. And if we
Mm-hmm.
do that, then it will be you sitting down at the empty piece of the land and the land looking at you. It does
Mm-hmm.
not really solve your home ownership challenge.
Problem. Right.
What we really want for persons to have at the end of the day is a house, something that they can live in. And when we've done the research, we would have seen where $4 million can build what we call a
A
basic
studio.
habitable unit. Yeah,
Okay.
could be a studio, one bedroom. You know how we in Jamaica, we are very.
Tanya Hannah McFashion.
Thank you very much. I was about to say we're very creative. So when we put in that sweat equity and all of that, you
Mm-hmm.
realize that 4 million stretches much farther than had you been trying to buy something with that 6.5. So it really allows you to break out, a portion for the purchase of the land, 2.5 million, the
Mm-hmm.
remainder for construction. Um, I think those are the main ones. There's also for the persons who are existing homeowners as well. The
Mm-hmm.
NHD makes available up to 2.5 million for you to make improvement to the existing property that you have. If it is a property that you bought using NHD funds, and you no longer own that property, the NHD, under certain circumstances, will allow you to use that amount to purchase a new one, providing that you did not lose that first property as a result of default. Persons have used that 2.5 million to install storm shutters. We live in a hurricane zone. Persons have used it to install solar panels as well. We're all trying to beat those electricity rates. So persons have used it, to convert their homes into being more, energy
Right.
friendly,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there are options there where that is concerned for the existing homeowner as well.
Okay, because I had a question here about your solar loan. So you're saying you don't really have a solar loan. It would fall under the home improvement 2.5 million.
Right.
Okay.
Or where the person was a NHT borrower, the
Mm-hmm.
NHT allows for a second loan 10
Mm-hmm.
years later in the case of public sector workers, or
Mm-hmm.
15 years later in the case of our general contributors, where they will again get a $2.5 million loan. So persons can use it under that. And I get a question sometimes too, why only 2.5? When we
Mm-hmm.
look at the demand for housing in Jamaica, we still have to have that bias towards the first time homeowner. There are still many of our Jamaicans who have not yet gotten a taste and a touch of home ownership. So we have that bias towards the first time homeowner. So we of course give them more funds as opposed to the person who is looking to make improvements to a property.
Okay. Um, okay. So Because that's one of the other questions I was coming to, that 15-year when you can tap back into a second benefit from the National Housing Trust. So thank you so much, Mr. Berbick, for just reading ahead of me and just answering those questions. Like, those seems to be questions like you get them every single day or very often. So you're on the draw with that. Um,
Yeah.
the trust, you mentioned earlier about the trust and its partnership with many different financial institutions, etc., to assist persons in their quest for home purchase. Does this extend to persons living overseas as well?
Uh,
um, can they partner with, or do you partner with overseas financial institutions?
Not at the moment, no, we do not partner with overseas financial institutions. But the beauty of it is that we have Jamaican mortgage institutions that have that presence overseas. So
Right.
thankfully, we have that. And also with the advent of technology as well, individuals overseas can of course continue to save in Jamaica. And when they're
Mm-hmm.
ready to access their mortgage, of course, we have that partnership that exists with our local mortgage institutions that can assist the persons. So no to the overseas banks, not as yet.
Not as
I
yet.
probably should rather say, but of course, as I said, the avenues exist through our local banks that have a presence overseas, or persons overseas can of course continue to do business with our local banks thanks to technology, and we can
Great.
always work out something there.
You mentioned something up here, Mr. Burbick, and my mind kind of work away sometimes, because you spoke about, persons tapping into, that family heirloom, that land that is sitting there, that you just want written permission. But it's not just Jamaica alone. Land is a thing that people lose their life over, people, family get broken up over. What happens when someone has given permission? Say, my dad, God bless his soul, say, okay, Marcia, I'm giving you permission to build. But a family discussion was not held. And so it is felt that, okay, daddy gave me that piece of land to the front that maybe some other one of my siblings wanted. And so they don't feel that I should have gotten that. Or, something happens down the line and daddy and I have a fallout, or auntie and I have a fallout, and they're like, okay, you need to get off my place. What happens then?
The NHT, we do not have the powers to police domestic
Mm-hmm.
issues, and I'm being as diplomatic as I
As
can.
you can be,
And,
right?
but a part of any, and I think I made this point before, that a part of any mortgage process includes that attorney. And we come back to that every time. You have to ensure that you have that kind of guidance as
Mm-hmm.
to what's happening. And we at the NHD, we do our due diligence. So we don't just take it for granted. Marcia walks in with a title and say, here is my dad's title, here's his written permission,
Mm-hmm.
my law. No, we will sit, we'll call Marcia in, we'll call in daddy, and we'll say, okay, make sure, have that conversation to make sure that all parties understand what they're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, at the end of the day, it's a loan that the NHT is giving. And the
Right.
NHT will ensure that it is on sound legal footing as well. That
Mm-hmm.
should anything happen, whether it's default or whatever else happens, that the NHT is in a position to recover its interest. And when we look at how much people Jamaicans make as it relates to contributions to the NHT and how much the NHT actually lends at the end of the day, it really means I'm lending you somebody else's money.
Mm-hmm.
So I, as a financier, has to do the necessary due diligence to ensure that should anything happen, I'm on sound legal footing to be able to recoup that loan that I've made to you. But on the other end of the family, I sound like a broken record of pardon me. You have to have that legal
That
guidance that
legal
lets you
guidance
know
before you
what's
put
happening.
your
Yes,
signature on those dotted lines. Okay,
definitely.
so let me just remind our viewers that we are having a very interesting conversation with no other than Mr. Dwayne Berbick, and he is the communication. Mr. Berbick, help me out, the man.
I thought you had it by now.
He's a
Corporate and
corporate
public
and
affairs.
public affairs manager at the National Housing Trust. And Mr. Berbick has really been pouring into us this evening. Mr. Berbick, for me personally, my family has maybe some 40, 50 acres of land that sits up in the hills, the cool hills of Montrose, St. Catherine. My granddad died, there was no will, but the titles are there, the property is still there that we would really, as a family, love to develop into a nice little, housing scheme, something that we can share, the Harris name to carry on.
Mhm.
What would we need to do? Because we don't have, other than the titles, we have nothing else. What do we need to do? How would you advise us to approach the trust if we want to help the trust to make more homes available for um, your members?
Well, you would have indicated something very important to the conversation, being that the title holder is no longer alive, and
Mm-hmm,
the NHT would now have to firstly establish who is now the rightful owner of the property.
mm-hmm,
So there is in Jamaica what we call, or I think it's not even just Jamaica, generally, there is the laws of intestacy that really governs what happens when an individual leaves property or any kind of asset without a will. What happens to it? And in Jamaica, one has to apply to what we call the Administrator General's Department that will
mm-hmm,
do a determination as to, okay, I believe there's a ranking that's looked at where first preference is given to the spouse, and from spouse we move to children, from
mm-hmm,
children we move to siblings, from siblings we start to look at aunts, uncles, cousins, and there's a list and there's a ranking of these individuals
mm-hmm,
and persons who find themselves in that position where and the asset owner has died, and you need to first have that determination through the administrator general's department, who
mm-hmm,
will make necessary applications before the courts to determine who is now the rightful owner of the asset. And having therefore established that, then we can then talk business as to what are the options, what is available,
okay.
that can be done with that piece of property.
Okay. All right. So we have a toll-free number for the NHT, which is 1-888 call NHT. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. I'm going to be throwing those out, at the end of the program. Um, Mr. Berbick, one of the difficulties faced in contacting many institutions is the inability to get through to a live representative. But you've already answered this question, and I've already attested to the fact that once you get a representative of the NHT, trust me, they're going to keep in touch with you if your account by any way, means, or shape needs attention. Somebody's going to reach out to you. So don't be afraid. And this is a free advertisement now for the NHT, Mr. Berbick. Don't be afraid to reach out to the NHT. Make sure if you have property in Jamaica that the NHT has your number, because unfortunately, things might not always be going the way that you're anticipating it to go. You might be expecting that your mortgage is being paid, but your mortgage is really in arrear. And the only way that the NHT is able to reach out to you is if they have a contact number, email, something for you. I can attest to the fact that they will reach out to you, especially if you're someone who pays your mortgage regularly and they see something going awry, they're going to reach out to you. So go online, um, onto the NHT site, download it, make sure that your current information is there. Suburbic, one of the good things about the NHT, many banks will start auctioning process, legal process against their customers in a very short time, 3 months, and they are ready to put your house on the auction. The NHT does not do that. The NHT will make every effort to contact you, to work with you, to make sure that they help you to keep your house. So please reach out to the National Housing Trust.
You're quite
We're
right.
right.
That's
Yes,
great
go ahead, Mr.
advice.
Berbick. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's great advice because it's a challenge we sometimes have, especially in this particular period that we're in with the challenges associated with COVID, that we are happy to be in a position that we are able to extend significant relief to individuals as it relates to waiving late fees for mortgage payments, issuing moratoria, so persons can get some break in payments. We, if necessary, will adjust interest rates to allow you to be able to make your mortgage payments on a monthly basis. We'll extend the loan tenure if we need to, so you have more time, and a longer loan tenure translates into smaller monthly payments as well. So there's a suite of options that are available to the mortgager who finds themselves in difficulty. And we
Mm-hmm.
do encourage persons, when you get that phone call, when you get that email to say, hey, what's happening with your mortgage? Let us know what's happening. Unfortunately, sometimes persons shy away from us. But if you do shy away from us, we are not we won't be able to help you, and we will do what you would have started out by saying, Marcia, ultimately to recoup that investment
Mm-hmm.
that we've made in the property. So when you really hear that the NHD is selling, you know, someone's property as a result of default, it really is our last resort. It's a worst case scenario. And the
Mm-hmm.
term we generally use is that that individual would have demonstrated a lack of interest in terms of keeping that property, and we have no other recourse at that time. But generally, the message is if you're having any difficulty, if you're having any challenge, do reach out to us. There's something there that we can pull out of the hat to assist you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Berbick. We are winding down, Mr. Berbick, but just to remind our viewers that we have Mr. Dwayne Berbick with us this evening, Corporate and Public Affairs Manager of the National Housing Trust. And he's here to tell you just how you can get a little piece of that rock, solid rock, in Jamaica. But, Mr. Berbick, question to you. Can a non Jamaican benefit from the National Housing Trust? I have many friends here. And
Yeah.
when I say to them, "Oh, I'm Jamaican," the first thing they will tell you, "Oh, I've been to Jamaica." And I said, "Okay, I can tell you where you went, Montego Bay." And I start naming the tourist mecca. But there are many persons who have actually expressed interest that they would love to buy properties in Jamaica, um, just for investment purpose. If that person is not a Jamaican, is there any way that they can benefit from the trust, sir?
I'll start off by saying this. In this case, we use the expanded definition of Jamaican.
Mm-hmm.
So you may not necessarily be born here, but you're
Right.
of Jamaican parentage, you're of Jamaican descent, there's some Jamaican linkage, there's some Jamaican in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I can help you. If you
Oh.
have absolutely none of the black, green, and gold in you,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, at this stage, the guidelines don't allow us to extend those benefits and those privileges. But
Courtesies to them.
once you're of Jamaican descent, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation,
Mm-hmm.
Jamaican by marriage, something, whatever, we're able to, once there's some linkage, there's some,
Linkage.
yeah,
So if
we
my
we're
children were born here, they were not born in Jamaica, but they're of Jamaican parentage. I was married to a Jamaican. Something, as long as there's an interest, I can
and
approach
there's
them.
some, right, there's some
Oh.
link, there's
Mm-hmm.
some
Has to be some connection
black,
other
green,
than
and
just
gold connection.
loving Jamaica, right? As
Right.
a lot of my American friends or other places, they would say, "Yeah, man, Jamaica, me yard, man." That sounds so funny. Um, but let me ask you: does the NHT have a outlet in like most of the major diaspora, like in the US and Canada and England, those major places per se? Do you have offices there?
No, we don't. I'll say yet. I'll speak it into being and say we don't yet.
Right.
But prior to COVID, when traveling was a little bit, less restricted,
Mm-hmm.
we from time to time we make these trips to different states, the UK, to Canada, to the US, to have this level of engagement to facilitate registration. And I'm pretty sure that in a post COVID era, knock on wood, we will be doing that again. So, no, we do not have offices here, but we do from time to time make those trips to have that kind of engagement and assist persons as best as we can.
And you know what, Mr. Berbick, I'm going to throw it out to you now. Maybe the NHG might want to consider this. My office is in Maplewood, New Jersey, and I'd be more than happy to facilitate a NHT contact point in my office. Um,
Tell you what, Marcia, you made the recommendation and you recommend that I come.
oh, no problem. Not a problem at all.
I wouldn't have a problem sitting
Well, you
across the
know
hall.
something, I don't think the NHC want to get rid of you from local. I think you are more beneficial to them right where you are because guess what? Thanks to COVID, we're having this conversation because maybe prior to COVID, you would have been traveling. You wouldn't have had the time to be joining me here this evening. So
Or I'd be
COVID,
joining you face to face.
exactly. So you know something, COVID has its good and it has its bad, just like anything else. And so I find that, they say when the tough get going, whatever, whatever that saying go, when the rough, whatever get going, the tough, whatever comes out of you. So COVID has been good because people have tapped into a lot of other resources that we were just taking, glancing over, and Zoom, StreamYard, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Persons are tapping more into these as we're
You're,
doing now this evening.
you're,
So
you're
thank
quite
you,
right.
COVID.
You're
Yes.
quite right. And for us at the NHG, it's not
Mhm.
just in our delivery of information that we have been able to capitalize on, some of the more technological spaces and avenues through which we can reach more of our contributors and our mortgagers, but
Mhm.
even on the mortgage processing side as well, that we've been able to fast track some of the plans that we have had at NHT. And so we're happy to also say that we're able to now start the mortgage process online. And a person can now engage with us electronically and advance the mortgage process to a particular point before they even come in. Actually, we only require now for the customer just to come in at one point to
Mm.
sign,
That's a sign.
just for the loan interview and to sign. But as it relates to submission of the paperwork and all of that, we facilitate that process online currently.
Okay,
So
cool.
yes, COVID has not been entirely cruel to us. We found some sweet spots that we've been able to
Oh
capitalize on.
yes, yes, yes. And it's a good thing, when we can take our lemonade and when we can take the lemon and make lemonade from it. So
Also,
we're Jamaicans, and not just Jamaica, but throughout the world, persons have found new resources and new ways of really expanding and extending ourselves during this what should have been troubling times.
yes.
So, Mr. Berbick, I think we're winding down. I don't know if there's anything major that I've left off from asking you. If there is, can I ask you to enlighten our viewers, listeners, and you know, tell
I,
me,
I'm
is there
running.
something?
I'm running through my mind to see if there's anything that we left out. I think we've been pretty comprehensive this evening. But I
Okay.
do, though, want to give you a bit of additional information. You would have touched on that toll free number.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have two toll free numbers for our persons overseas as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are reaching out to us from the US or Canada, the number there is 1 800
Mm-hmm.
858
Mm-hmm.
3219.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're reaching out to us from the UK,
Mm-hmm.
it's 44, the area code there,
Mm-hmm.
203
203
514
514.
8816.
So let me repeat. For the US and Canada, it's 1-800-858-3219. And for the
Yes,
UK, it is 44-203-514-8816.
that's correct. So those are our toll free numbers for our Jamaicans overseas who are trying to reach us.
Okay, not a problem. I will definitely be adding this to my page. And for our viewers, watching, listening, whether it be live now or via replay, in addition to the NHT enlightening us this evening, we are also going to be talking to the NIS come next week, Wednesday evening, because there are many benefits that as Jamaican that we have contributed to, both to the NHT, both to the NIS, and we need the NIS to really tell us how we can tap in to some of these NHT benefits. So you see, the NIS and the NHT, they work hand in hand, right? So, Mr. Berbick, your last word to us, please.
My last word, home ownership is perhaps one of the biggest decisions that an individual will perhaps ever make
Mm-hmm.
in their lifetime. And as a result, it requires careful planning, it requires research, and it is very involved. It's not buying a car, it's not grocery shopping where you go into the supermarket and you point and you say, I want that one, I want that one, and you walk out with a set of keys. It's
Right,
not. And because of that, it requires, as I said, the research, it requires the planning, and it requires patience on the part of the prospective buyer. And know sometimes in this fast paced world, we get a little bit frustrated that things aren't happening as fast as they should. Why is a mortgage taking 90 days? Why is it taking 120 days? But because it's a major investment that you're making, you're putting hard earned money into this investment. Um, it's a transaction that cuts across different institutions, your bank, the NHT, the titles office, the tax office, the stamp office, different agencies of government. If you're doing construction, you have to ensure that you're building in an area that is approved, that your building design is approved. So I say all that to say, be patient with the process. Be patient with the process. It's big business. It's a big investment, and we need that time to ensure that we protect you. And I ask that you do the research even long before you think you are ready. That you do the necessary research, so you come to the process with not just the awareness, but you're able to better manage your expectations as to what is going to happen and what is expected of you. You will need to have that 5 or 10% deposit. You're going to need a valuation report. You're going to need a surveyor's ID report. So do the research, reach out to someone who you can have that conversation with, who can give you the advice. Reach out to us at the NHT, reach out to your realtor, reach out to your financier. But just have that conversation with someone and don't wait too long. Real estate is that area, construction is that area that is constantly evolving. And
mm-hmm.
unfortunately, many times it's not evolving to the benefit of the customer as it
Right.
relates to prices,
Yep.
primarily. So if you have it on the back burner, move it from the back burner and put it on the front burner. Actually, just don't put it on the front burner. Put on the pot, put in the water,
Let
start
it
putting in
boil.
different ingredients and the different elements. Turn up the flame a little bit, as you rightly say, Marty, and let it start boiling and start the process and get the process going. And of course, reach out to us. We're always here to assist you.
Mr. Burbick, as you said that, I'm just going to share two small things with you. And it's interesting because sometimes you say something to people and you never remember it. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, I think it was Monday morning, because, I sent her the flyer about the NHT and whatever. And she said to me, she said, Sia, I remember over 20 years ago, you said to me, buy a studio. She said, you told me that your first house does not has to be your last home. And she said she has had that in her mind ever since she bought a studio. And I mean, she has pretty much turned it into a mansion, just as many persons have done who have gotten studios. So If you're watching, if you're listening, your first home does not have to be your last home. The younger you buy your home, the more progressive you feel. I bought my first home at 27, and man, I felt good. And I still feel good as I acquire additional property. But as you talk about putting on the pot, Mr. Berbick, even before you put on the pot, set the table. I mentioned I didn't come from a fancy home. I grew up with my grandmother right there in Linstead. But one thing I can tell you, even before my grandmother was able to buy a table, she used to get the building blocks and she would put a piece of paper on, or something on the ground, and she would set those blocks up and she would put a piece of board on top of it, and she would throw her nice white sheet over that. And you can't say it's not a table, Mr. Berbick. And tell me something, that table would be set with the best pairs of knife and fork you can find, and whatever she could find in terms of glass and plates and whatever. It might be four different plates on the table, but the table was set. And I always ask her, Mama, why you do this? And she said to me, if you are looking for something, you must prepare for it. Little girl, if you are looking for something, you must prepare for it. Or you're going to get something if you don't know where you want. And Mama would always have her table set. And if I could show you my table right now, Mr. Berbick, every home that I've lived in since, my dining table has been set. It's a trend that I carry. I'm looking for something. I know I expect a meal, whether it's going to be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whether or not I'm going to sit at that table, but my table is always set. So, to our viewers, if you're preparing for a home, as Mr. Berbick says, start saving that $1. Stop buying all those big fancy handbag and shoes. After you've acquired the home, you can do anything you want. But while you have something working towards, save towards it. Because you never know when an opportunity is going to come knocking and you are not prepared. So that's my final word to my listeners, to my viewers this evening. Mr. Berbick, I thank you so very much for gracing my little platform here at CS Bite and a Mouthful. And I'm sure and I hope that this won't be the last time that we will be speaking. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for informing us. Thanks for educating us. And as we seek to do here at CS Bite and a Mouthful, I hope that I was able to leave someone more inspired than when you signed off. Until next week, another interesting program with the NIS. This is Marcia Harris with CS Bite and a Mouthful saying, ciao, I'm out of here. See you soon. Suburbic, just hold on a second, please.